We're live. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our Breakfast Club. Today on our Breakfast Club,
Apparently, the internet loved the World Cup.
how cultures around the world think about parenting.
How many Wikipedia articles did you edit today?
Marriage advice from the world's longest married couple.
She Thor? Really?
5 ways to ease trans-con travel.
All that plus our recommendations coming up next.
Welcome to our Breakfast Club, where new perspectives are just around the corner. I'm Chandra Ockberger,
And I'm Kurt Ockberger.
and we're happy to have you here. Let's enjoy the show.
Yes, let's.
Let's.
It's World Wednesday, where we talk about things outside the United States.
Go for it, Kurt.
All right. Let's talk about that World Cup. I actually even commented on it. I think it was a post on Facebook. We went all last week's World Wednesday without mentioning soccer, football, the World Cup at all. But now it's over, right? And we all know who won, or I'm assuming someone won, and there's a
Germany.
country out there that's happy about that. So,
Yes, Germany.
I stopped paying attention after the U.S.
Our last name is Ockberger.
Great.
My maiden. No.
So that's good. But apparently, the internet really took a shine to the World Cup, at least this year, or maybe more so this year than ever, which I guess in and of itself is not surprising. But I thought I'd read this short little article from Edgar Alvarez on Engadget and just break down some of the numbers or let you know how popular it actually was. This year's World Cup set records all over the place. Not only did it keep folks in the U.S. tuned into their team like never before, but it had the most tweeted about sports game ever, right? Any sport, in that 7-1 thumping that Germany gave Brazil. All right, so that now stands as the high watermark for the most tweeted about sporting event of all time, since Twitter's been around, right?
Oh, really?
Yes.
Cool.
More than you say your Super Bowls or your
Well, I mean,
Olympics
every single
or
country. Oh, many,
yeah,
many, many countries are involved, right?
yeah.
So,
And you had your Olympics, but it's just not the same, right? Or at least they feel the same about Olympics. Apparently, the
well,
world
it's just
they do the
divided,
World
kind
Cup.
of.
Sure. Um, and you have to just see the growing trend of every day more people using and being on Twitter, right? So all these numbers should be increasing anyway, right? By sheer virtue of you have more people on Twitter and more people used to engaging on Twitter, then you're going to have more tweets about a thing, I suppose. Um, but there were great numbers across all the social networks. Facebook reports that the 2014 World Cup final was the biggest sporting event in its history. So the 7-1 beatdown of Brazil was the most tweeted about event, but the final match was the most commented, liked, and posted about.
The most
So
most engagement.
engaged on Facebook,
Cool.
combining for over 280 million interactions. Um, Twitter, on the other hand, says the match produced a total of 32.1 million tweets, and in the process broke the record for any event. So this includes like the Obama election and re-election and like just any event, period, Super Bowls and what have you, at 618,725 tweets per minute, or TPM is our new metric. 618,000 tweets every single minute that it was going on. So it's interesting the number difference, or I thought it was interesting the 280 million interactions on Facebook versus the 32 million interactions on Twitter. Kind of gives you an idea of the difference between the populations of those two services, because they're not equal, right? There are
No,
more
not at
people
all.
on Facebook than there are on Twitter, but whatever, that is a thing, right? And that's where so if you were looking at where to engage people, if you were, say, FIFA or somehow affiliated with a football team, Facebook is where you're going to see a lot of interaction by volume, anyway. As for the streaming front, Hispanic-focused network Univision had 456,000 unique viewers total on its website and apps. To put this in perspective, the Mexico versus Brazil group stage game nabbed 1.6 million unique viewers. That was because that's much higher than the final game, but that's because it was before Univision started requiring a cable login to use its service.
Mm.
Which there's a whole other discussion on sort of cord killing and what do you want, especially like what do you want for your advertisers, what do you want for the exposure of people, especially Americans, to your game, right? They're desperately trying to get Americans interested in football, soccer, whatever you want to call it. And
the ball.
Right. And so slapping I'm sorry, you gotta log in through your cable provider to watch this makes it does this. It takes you from 1.6 million viewers down to 456,000.
Mm-hmm.
So have a nice day. It's just totally So again, another discussion, but that's all courtesy of ESPN and I mean Univision is the site down, but it was all done through ESPN and the Watch ESPN app and website. Yeah, so it's whether it was through Twitter or Facebook, ESPN or Univision, it's safe to say that FIFA made its mark stateside and globally in 2014. So, just something I thought was interesting. How and the World Cup is just sort of indicative of this an event, especially an event that's not from America, like all of our World Series that is only U.S. versus U.S. teams, and Super Bowls, which is U.S. versus U.S. football, and things like that. But how much engagement and interaction throughout the world there is on these newer, social media platforms, and the rise of how this is going to keep, there's a trend here, right? And it's going to keep going and going, and
yeah.
And where people want to. I would say watched more of World Cup online via like Twitter. As I say, watched in air quotes because through Twitter or Google, where you can just type in the game and you get like a real time refreshing score and updates and things like that. Versus on TV because we don't have cable, and we don't have ESPN. And because we don't have any cable package, I can't even log in to the Watch ESPN site to watch it. So
there's also something to be said about people wanting to do this type of thing with other people. Just going to large public areas. I was in Portland, Oregon for WDS, and Sunday was the final day of the conference. But the city of Portland, Oregon, closed down Pioneer Square and put up a huge big screen, and there were hundreds of people that showed up, and the conference alone had 3,000 people, and many of them were German, so there was something to be said about that. But the people that were in the park ranged from people that lived on the streets all the way up to, people staying at the fancy hotel that's right on the corner. But like it started pouring rain in 90-degree heat, and there were still people just out watching. Hundreds of people watching the game. So it's interesting to see. And while people are doing that, what are they doing? They're tweeting, people that are in other places or just.
Yeah, the irony of I'm standing in a place surrounded by human beings, and I am staring at my phone, telling the internet world, the virtual people, what communicating with them and telling them how I'm feeling, rather than talking to human beings I'm surrounded by.
On a household level, you have what you were just talking about, but on the other level, I wonder how many spaces, how many cities. I'm sure Austin had at least a couple of those things going on, just because that's the kind of town it is. But how you gauge those numbers in viewership, right? At least here in the United States.
Yeah, it makes for good press anyway, right? Like every single time any game ended, Facebook, I would see it because I'm subscribed or I follow the Facebook Newswire page, which is sort of like post news articles up there or videos, and every single time a game ended, there'd be inevitably be a video of whatever city, fill in the blank country celebration, and it would just be this like short little video of people going crazy, and
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
almost interchangeable, but every single time. So they definitely you only need one of those kind of places. It may have only happened in one city in like one bar or one like little square, but it makes you think, oh, the whole country is out of control, crazy happy about that. And like
Yeah.
even the U.S. I mean, sure there was excitement, but you got to put it in perspective, right? And maybe the best you could say is there was growing excitement and engagement with this World Cup over the others. I don't know. I haven't seen. I'm sure eventually you'll stumble upon an article that compares this World Cup versus the previous ones as far as U.S. involvement,
Well, I
but
mean, I think
still
there's something to be
minuscule
said that
compared to
that's
all the
it's
others.
in, like our hemisphere, right? I mean, maybe not in our country, but there's something, there's a lot of Brazilians here. I mean, people from South and Central America, and I mean, it is the Americas. So,
Yeah, but they were already interested in soccer, right? The whole push that coming into this was, can we get Americans interested in it? Not the Americans who are already interested in soccer, but
yeah.
new. Can we convert? Right? Can we
Mm.
get converts? I mean, what do you think? Do you think that this World Cup did anything for that?
I think it I think it did just because you see so like there's this it's not just like you can't just be like okay pull somebody out of their tiny home up on top of a mountain who doesn't like soccer and doesn't watch TV to like to watch the World Cup, but it's all about interactions, right? So people see their friends or even if coworkers or whoever super excited about their team, and it's just the way it's just being American, right? So you get excited and more. I think more people end up watching it because they just see the excitement around it from the people that already like soccer or from the different countries. I mean, we have a very large, I mean, aside from Irish Irish American population. I'm going to guess we have pretty. I mean, Germans were pretty prolific. I've rarely been sitting at a table or a networking event when almost all the people are like, "Oh, I'm part German and something else." So I think there's something to be said about that as well, where there's that pride as far as even though the United States didn't make it, you have your wherever your ancestors were from, and you go and I mean, my little sister ran into my college roommate at a bar in New York City, randomly watching the German World Cup game, and I thought that was interesting, and it's funny because my old college roommate is half German as well, and I'm half German, but it's like from generations ago, and I know that's not a West Coast thing, but that's definitely an East Coast thing where that has to that plays into it as well. So I think yeah, I think a lot more people just as time goes by, we become a smaller and smaller world. So
Well,
people are interested in more things that are alike, right?
well, maybe that's the better question: is does it even matter
Yeah,
if
yeah,
Americans like soccer? Right? Doesn't matter. Those stats I were reading when they're saying like all the records that the World Cup games were breaking weren't, with an asterisk, not including the Super Bowl or not including the World Series or the NBA Finals, right? Those were any event, period, right?
yeah, yeah.
So if that's all that as an advertiser, because in the end that's what it all boils down to, right? Can we the whole reason they play these games, the whole reason the World Cup exists is to make money for the advertisers. If that's it.
Yeah.
Um,
On this level, it would still happen. I think people would find a way to make it happen regardless. So,
mm-hmm. um, so so if that's your point, and all these nowadays they're all global conglomerates or multinational corporations, right? So anybody who's advertising is trying to reach. I don't think anyone advertised with the World Cup to only reach Americans, right? I'm pretty
no,
sure every
obviously
single
not.
company that advertised was trying to reach a broad audience. If that's true, then who cares if how many Americans you reached? you want the total number of people reached no matter what. And with this World Cup, you reached more people than anybody else, right?
Yeah.
So maybe it doesn't matter. I think that's the point. Like Americans can either get on the bus or get run over by it, right? Like it's gonna the bus is moving. The World Cup is a thing, and it wasn't. It was with a thing way before the 2014 World Cup, and we can keep you're going to keep seeing all these articles every 4 years about, ooh, is this the one where America, but it's going to increasingly just not
Well, I
matter.
think it's here we care. I mean, like we hear that, but everywhere else they're just focused on the game. And like I said, as the world gets smaller, and it does with every single tweet, the world gets smaller, and it's just it's going to be, just like I think borders will be relevant at some point. This the whole sports thing.
And yeah, and
It's
it's just
how it's how we appreciate nationalism, but as more and more people live in different places that they weren't born in, I mean, and that's happening worldwide, these
yeah,
things are just going to they just fuse, and that's the beauty of the
yeah,
human species.
yeah, and I hope that some other sports look at this World Cup model and try to adopt it. Like
Yeah.
football, no, that's not going to happen. But why can't there be a World Cup of baseball or a World Cup of basketball? Right? Those,
Yeah, because
especially
other countries,
baseball.
those
I'd say probably
and
baseball
basketball,
first.
there are tons of countries that are pretty serious about basketball, aren't
Yeah,
there?
the basketball in the Olympics is always more and more
Pretty
competitive,
competitive. Yeah.
and why not? Is it every 4 years? And it's not because, and again, it's because of money, right? That they have these Super Bowl rights and World Series rights, television rights, and all the advertising and everything locked down. But if you were to create a new event that was just, hey, every 4 years we're going to have the real World Series,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
real, we really mean it, World Series, or something like. Oh, they have Little League World Series. It actually is teams
Mm.
from all over the world and things like that. So hopefully, I mean, you're not going to be able to, and they already know that. You hear from time to time about. Even well, I hear about it maybe because I follow it mostly in football, but like the Buffalo Bills playing games in Toronto, I think, right? They have a game in Mexico between two football teams, and then they have for many years, I think for the last several years, they've had a game in London every year. So football seems to be the one trying the most. Maybe basketball and baseball is doing it too, and I don't see those. But um, so I think they realize it's out there, but I think a bigger push. You're gonna have to do like a new event and create something and
Mm.
a new tournament just out of thin air. And but
Yeah, right on. Well,
all right,
that's cool that that was so highly engaged on social media, and
indeed,
hopefully we will see it in other sports that you're a little more interested in.
maybe.
I like soccer, so I mean football.
I watched it, so obviously I like it enough. I mean, it did its
Right
job.
on. So my first story is how cultures around the world think about parenting, and it says, "What can American parents learn from how other cultures look at parenting?" A look at child rearing ideas in Japan, Norway, Spain, and beyond. And this is interesting because it kind of, not kind of, pretty much denounces American parenting in general.
In favor of the Dragon Mom, everybody should whack their
No,
kids with
actually,
a stick
quite
when
the
they do.
actually the contrary. And I thought that I would that that's what this was going to be about, and it's more about um, how parents want to just desperately set their children up for success here in the United, and all parents do,
Mhm.
but to but what lacks in what we do is because we see the news and we don't have control over the latest like murders or kidnapping or whatever. So we take control over our children and give them less and less freedom to be independent at young ages. And it's something I'm curious about just because I remember at pretty much the same age, well, that our kids are, we would ride our bikes a couple of miles to a park. I mean, straight pretty much through our city to go to a park for the day. And it would just be the neighborhood kids, and my brother and I mean, like 7 and 5. And it wasn't a thing. Or we would run up 5 blocks to the corner store to buy penny candies, and they really were a penny. I know, crazy times. But um, they in this article they say how we just don't do it. You don't see so
We
in
don't do what? What do we
we
not
don't
do?
let we don't
Freedom?
yeah, freedom to children to be independent and basically go to the corner store. And I mean there's things like there's things that we live in the country that the nearest store is 10 miles away, but they're
Well,
saying
yeah, there
even
aren't
people,
corner stores anymore, right?
well,
There's
no,
gas
even people, well,
stations, but
people that live in city, that's true, that's
no,
true.
they don't exist. The pay phones are gone, and the corner stores are gone that the pay phones used to be out in front of. Now you got a Starbucks there, which is cool, but yeah, no, a Subway maybe. There are no corner stores anymore. You got your grocery stores and your gas stations.
Yeah, that's true. I mean for that. And so here it is. So like, so they say Norwegians believe that it is better for, so just the fundamental culture. In Norway, childhood is strongly institutionalized, says Norwegian psychologist and economists Margren, I can't even say that
Economists.
last name, economist, sorry. Indeed, most children enter state-sponsored daycare at 1. Parents first get almost a full year of paid leave and then enter school and organized activities. Norwegians believe that this is better for children to be in daycare as toddlers. At daycare, methods reflect the country's dedication to fresh air. So they go out when it's freezing cold out, they get outside and what have you, and have other people interacting, basically community raising, helping raise children. So there's that. And then,
Yeah, so hold on a second. So I've been to Norway, um, and it's funny that you say that all sounds great, and I'm sure it's true. And they start them out so well, and then I mean Norway has all kinds of problems.
yeah,
Mainly, well, it has one main problem, which is alcohol.
yeah,
I mean these guys. So I've been there, right? And I was there when I was 22, 23, and so I was going out to the bars and stuff, and it's just endemic. I mean, now also again, this has been 10 years,
hmm,
so hopefully maybe things have changed, but it is just horrible. I mean, they get
yeah.
obliterated.
But
They all have
if we're talking about
problems.
children, yes, and that is, I mean, that is a social issue. But we're talking about parenting and children. They have the highest literacy rate in the entire world, and I mean that's not from this article. I just know that, and they start them off, which I think it's they just have an entire different pathway for education. And
Yeah. But what's the result like and what does that get them, I guess?
yeah, I don't know.
What's
I
the
mean,
benefit? So Norway, if you don't know, has billion. They have oil in
yeah,
Norway, right? And in the sea. And unlike, so I was living in Alaska, and actually at the time, and was visiting a guy who worked for ConocoPhillips, who was just stationed over there and managing one of the rigs. And so Alaska, um, the royalties, the state, and then the government keeps like a very small, I want to say it's like 20% is their royalty on oil that the corporations come in and take up out of our public ground, right? We get to keep 20% for letting them do that. In Norway, they keep 75% of the money and allow the corporations to come in and take 25% for their time and effort. Which has, and what does that mean? Well, it means that like over the same given time period, Alaska has a permanent fund. Not to get too much, but
mm,
basically they have a little oil royalty program, and it had like 30 billion in it. And in that same time, Norway's permanent fund that they had $700 billion in it. So consequently, they have more money than they know what to do with. They are Europe's bank. They're often described as that. They're not in the European Union because they have so much money. There's absolutely no benefit in being in the
yeah,
EU, and consequently, like everything is paid for. You can put all your 1 year olds in state sponsored daycare when you have
yeah.
$700 billion in the bank
And
and a pretty small population.
I totally get that. I mean, like, so there's something to be said about that too, right? Like that there's never a need for want, right? If you grow up Norwegian, you're everything, you will have everything, right?
Yep.
You never have to work for anything, right? So
Nope.
that's more
And
of,
they don't, consequently.
then that's more the problem than anything else. So yeah, I'm just gonna
Yep,
go
go
on
ahead.
to my
I
next
just want to
country.
say about Norway. You had to start with Norway.
So so they say, they're like the craziness of starting kids so young. And then that's next one, culture in Japan, where Gross Low lives part of the year. She lets her 4-year-old daughter run errands with her 7-year-old sister and 11-year-old brother without parental supervision. Her kids don't hesitate to take the Tokyo subways by themselves and walk on busy streets alone, just like their Japanese peers. But when she comes back to the United States, she doesn't allow them to do the same. And she says, if I let if I let them out on their own like that in the US, I wouldn't just get strange looks, she said. Somebody would call Child Protective Services on me. And she's probably right. And it's interesting. I mean, so basically it's a pretty long article, and the gist of it, and it's not so much like just let your kids go, because we wouldn't do that either, right? And I struggle with when is the right time to let the kids go down to the pool, which is, we live in a gated community, right? And their pathways, and it's just like, okay, when are they going to be able to do that alone? And I've just internally thought that and never said that out loud, but
Well, it's not. Yeah, it's not. When are they going to be able to do that? It's when are
when
we
are we
going to
going to
let
allow
them?
them? When are
Right.
we going to
Yeah.
allow them to like go and do that and feel that they're ready to do that? At right now they're 7 and 5, so Abby's
Yeah. I mean,
8th
and like you
is
said,
steadily approaching. But
you,
the gist of this article is basically, in other cultures, they set up their children to leave them, right? There's a sense of independence in the way they're raising their their children, where that's less so in our culture. And I actually have to agree with that, where we want control over, we want to set them up to go to college, but not necessarily be independent, right? At least not at a young age. We discourage independent thinking in children. Now, I've seen and I'm totally broad line generalizing, just as this article is. And there's a million different ways to raise, just raising children is to each family has their own thing. But yeah, I kind of I see the differences in different and how we can just learn from each other, from different cultures, and we have great things in our culture as well. But if we just kind of took the best from all the surrounding cultures, we'd have better humans, right?
yeah. I mean, what I really see is, and your example of letting the kids go to the pool. It's not the freedom as much as it is risk, right? So we're Americans are increasingly becoming risk adverse.
Hmm.
Um, Many times for no good reason. There is no reason why the kids can't wander around, especially we live in a gated community, right? Where
Yeah.
there is no crime. So, what exactly are we afraid of? I mean, at 7, I mean, they're borderline, or at least Abby is. But I mean, I was, like you said, you were riding your bike all over the place, and I was completely wandering around my neighborhoods when I was a kid in areas that were many
Oh,
times
I grew
more
up in the hood. I
risky
grew
than
up
this.
like in a
And now we
really bad
live
neighborhood.
in total suburbia, even on the outskirts of suburbia, I would say, in
Yeah.
a gated community of McMansions, and but you can't go. There's a street they have to cross, so
Yeah.
that's an obstacle. Um, you know, Full of families, like this whole place, and
It's all families, and it's all, so it is interesting to me, like just even the way we feel about it, right? I mean, it's just like, no, not, at least not yet, right? I'm not
and
ready
what you're
for that,
doing,
but
and that's an example, and there are many others of we're not letting them take risks, and
and
we don't.
and and accept responsibility for themselves, right? I mean, that there is something to be said about that, and that feeling of accomplishment when I can't remember what I let Abby do not too long ago, and it was something that was just like a little bit out of, not totally out of my comfort zone, but I hadn't let her do before, and she felt so. Oh, yesterday I let the kids cut the banana with the good knives,
The sharp knives,
the sharp, well, really,
sharpish.
Yeah, well, I think we need to get them sharpened. But they're crazy, crazy kitchen knives, and I've never let them do that before. But they've had this look of accomplishment on their faces because it was just like, okay, I trust you to do this. Concentrate on what you're doing, and I showed them, how to hold, tuck your fingers in and whatever. But it was me giving them that trust.
Yeah, and even unfortunately in America now, and this goes, I guess, speaks to your article, that there's only so much as a parent, as parents, that we can do.
Yeah.
Society, our American society, has put constraints on us. Like, go to Walmart and try to buy some lawn darts. Can you go anywhere? Go to Amazon and try to get
Does
lawn
anywhere
darts.
else in the world do lawn darts?
But no, lawn darts is a metaphor, right, for the craziest, stupid, dangerous thing that you can do in your backyard to have fun, right? It's akin to hucking rocks at each other, which I guess technically you could still do. They still sell rocks, right? Um, but those kind of things, like try to buy a toy gun that doesn't have a bright orange tip on the front, right? Why? Why do toy guns have orange tips on the front?
So the kids don't get shot.
Shot by the police. Yeah. Great. Okay. It's that whole, it's the litigiousness. Try to buy a garage door that doesn't have the, like, if anybody gets within 10 feet of it, it goes back up again in case it might accidentally hurt someone, right? And the coffee at McDonald's is too hot, and on and on and on. And all those things are problems that happen everywhere in the world. The difference is in the U.S., the companies get sued about them, right? And they will get sued. Americans will sue at the drop of a hat. And because of that, corporations aren't going to take the risks, and that trickles down to every family, right? In that we can't buy things that, what if we use the lawn darts with supervision, right? And we knew how to play with lawn darts correctly, no. And of course, I say all of that, and what am I thinking? Oh, except for guns, of course, like real guns. It's not toy. Yeah. Like toy guns have to have an orange tip, but I can go right down to the street right now and buy 10, 15 firearms, bring them back to the house, and just leave them around with the kids, and no single person in Texas is going to stop me from point A to point B back to the house again at all. So there you go. That's the
totally off my expert.
We don't take any risks except when it involves like immediate, like deadly force. Then that one, go ahead. Nothing. Yeah. That's America. Love it or leave it.
So and in this article, I think we need to learn from other cultures and know that there is no one right way, but accountability and teaching our children to be responsible for themselves, to make good decisions, right? I mean, we've come to this conclusion a couple of times, and I think because of what you just mentioned, like we are very much so a Sioux society, and we have been for a long time. There's no room for error, right? There's no room for human error or mistake or taking accountability or not, or just saying, look, crap happens, right? Like these are the consequences.
You're not allowed to make mistakes as an American.
Yes,
right? It's that whole fear of fallaure.
Right.
We've talked about this all the time. Right? Keep trying and trying the same thing, even if until you get it right, and that the fallacies of those kind of mentality. But yeah, it's all about. To me, it all boils down to avoiding risk, and a culture that's permeating. You must avoid risk at all. In all possible
right, and
forms.
There's something said that keeps a large group of people in its place, right? That will never even attempt to try and move out of whatever
follow
class
the path,
they're in, right? Like you're going to follow the leader, and not say, hey, this looks like it's not right, because it's risky to say that. It's risky to not follow the group, right? So,
and it absolutely stifles. So not taking risk has the effect of stifling innovation, right?
Creativity.
Because if you're not willing to risk something, trying something different, you'll never discover that thing. And so what do we see? And since we started doing this podcast, and we're 22 episodes in now, all these articles that are so-and-so from, fill in the blank, not United States country, right? Some other country has invented this new thing. And day by day, that is slipping away. And I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing, right? Other countries are allowed to have good ideas, but other cultures have discovered that. They've discovered, how to innovate, where maybe they were more rigid before, and probably have looked at the U.S. and kind of taken some of those ideas. But how can we, get some risk in this and allow our people to, teach our people to try different things and invent stuff? And we are going the other way, and for whatever reason, and so we are losing innovation, and other countries are gaining it, and that could be a dangerous trend.
So let's all learn from each other. Rise up. Go ahead, Kurt.
All
Second
right.
story.
Second story. We'll make these last two quick, and then maybe we do recommendations. So my next one for this is entitled, "For this author, 10,000 Wikipedia articles is a good day's work."
Whoa.
10,000. You heard me correctly.
Awesome. I was thinking of submitting one, actually. I just looked up the other day on how to submit.
9,999 more today, and you'll be on par with this guy, and then you got another 10,000 tomorrow.
He obviously does not have kids at home.
No, I would take it. Well, it doesn't say, but I would say no. In Sweden, Sverker Johansson, Sverker, that's a great name, and his bot have created 2.7 million articles. Some purists complain. This is from the Wall Street Journal, Ellen Jervil, and it talks about Sverker Johansson, who is the most prolific author you've never heard of. Volunteering his time over the past 7 years, publishing to Wikipedia, which, if you don't know, Wikipedia is like the online encyclopedia that anybody can contribute to, and then people can modify the articles, and it goes through the whole thing, right? He's 53. He's the 53-year-old Swede can take credit for 2.7 million articles. That is 8.5% of Wikipedia. Wow. So this guy is creeping up on. I did 10% of Wikipedia as far as content-wise goes. Yeah, which far outpaces any other user who submits articles to Wikipedia. He is particularly prolific in cataloging obscure animal species, including butterflies and beetles, and highlighting small unknown towns in the Philippines. Cool. His wife is Filipino. He holds degrees in linguistics, civil engineering, economics, and particle physics.
Of course he does.
Like you do, which I think qualifies as more degrees than a compass. And so the guy is not like some kid in his garage or some out of work guy who has nothing better to do but kind of figure out. He's trying. He's well intentioned, I guess. It should be noted.
Well, that should be noted. I mean, because that's super duper important. It's not just like talking for the sake of talking, right?
Yeah, and if the article stopped there, or if that was all that there was to say about him, it would probably nobody would have a problem, right? The issue arises because the way he publishes all of his documents is through a bot or a computer software program he created that basically scrubs databases that he points it at and utilizes a template, kind of fills it out automatically and posts it up to Wikipedia. It's called LSJBot, and it creates up to 10,000 entries on a good day. And so the problem that, I don't know what you call them, purists or anti-botists have is that mainly it's only the most cursory, like high-level, basic information, and that it's not useful enough, I guess, about for people who are visiting Wikipedia. So in other words, like why even bother? He, of course, so the counter argument to that is that, hey, it's something, right? So you went from having absolutely nothing. If you go to Wikipedia and you type in, obscure Filipino city here, you would get nothing. Sorry, Wikipedia does not know, the world's encyclopedia does not know about that thing you're looking for, or some weird butterfly or something, right? And now, at least there's something. You got something to go on, right? For cities, it's things like geographic location, like GPS coordinates, population, like basic city stuff, right? And of course, it is Wikipedia, so anybody can come on and enhance, add to the article if they have pertinent information. I mean, let's be frank. A lot of these cities and weird insects and things, what else is there to talk about, right? So it's just this interesting debate between And he's not the only one doing this. There are other botists, or bot approval. There's a bot approvals group for people who use these sort of software programs to create their articles.
As long as they're well intentioned, I mean, that's the point of Wikipedia, isn't it? So that you can have as much information about things that humans know.
Yeah, right? and so this is, again, it's not precluding anyone else from adding to it. That's the thing that I don't get about their argument, right? Is it gets you started, right? It's an entry. In my experience, it's better to have, I mean, as long as it's not wrong, right? If it's all factual, there are just some things. We're getting to the point, people, right? When you're looking at like Wikipedia, where you're down to all the importance, not important, all the like commonly looked for things, like the major features of the world, the 7 wonders, the important people, like they've all been cataloged, right? They're on Wikipedia already. So if you were to wake up today, if I challenge everyone listening, like, okay, go to Wikipedia and do an article that does not exist yet, I mean, what the heck would you do it on, right? I mean, you're gonna have to get pretty nichey at this point to do this.
And you do have to get nichey, or you can be from an area that has just verbal, verbal traditions and stories passed down from generation to generation, right? I mean, there are many, many cultures that have just very specific lines that aren't, it's not Western culture, or not, doesn't have history books, or people, conquered and destroyed all their history, right? So these stories are passed down from generation to generation, and it's not so much that everything is like written in stone, and that's the beauty of Wikipedia. I mean, and also its fault as well, that you can add to whatever you want to as a story, right?
Well, within reason, most pages are moderated and stuff, but yes, you can make a change for however short, it lives up there until someone, some group or some person moderates it down. But yes, if you have valuable information, it will get added to Wikipedia, right? And then so I'll just wrap it up with an example he gives is on Swedish Wikipedia, for instance. He says there are more than 150 articles on characters from the Lord of the Rings, and fewer than 10 about people from the Vietnam War.
Wow.
I have nothing against Tolkien, and I'm more familiar with the battle against Sauron than the Tet Offensive. But is this really a well-balanced encyclopedia?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like, no offense. Like, that's great that there are 150 articles on Lord of the Rings characters, but it ain't so great that there's 10 about people from the Vietnam War. I think I know more than 10 people that were in the Vietnam War.
Yeah, right? We definitely do.
So that means that one of the people I know about, know personally, is not on Wikipedia who was in the Vietnam War. So, that's sort of the.
So good for them.
Yes,
I'm glad. So moving on to light marriage advice from the world's longest married
couple.
Here we go.
Let's hear it. Should I be taking notes? Or?
Yes, go ahead. Zelmira and Herbert Fisher.
I don't take advice from Zelmira, people named Zelmira and Herbert. Sorry.
A bear. Were married for almost 87 years. So it's safe to say they know a thing or two about marriage. 87 years.
Yeah.
Wow. The Fishers participated in a Q&A on Twitter, of course.
Not an AMA? Man, this is ripe for an Ask Me Anything on Reddit. All right. Twitter, that's fine.
Q&A on Twitter, and shared some advice on love and commitment. Some of the answers are great tips and carry a lot of weight when you consider how long they've been together. We grew up together. So first one is they were best friends before they were married. A friend is for life. Our marriage has lasted a lifetime. Remember, marriage is not a contest. Never keep score. Agree that it's okay to disagree, and fight for what really matters. Learn, this is my favorite, learn to bend, not break. And that's really cool. There's no secret to our marriage. We just did what was needed for each other and our family. Respect, support, and communicate with each other. Be faithful, honest, and true. Love each other with all your heart. Oh, tissue. But no, I mean, not even.
Was this an article or a Hallmark card?
It's cool, man. I mean, so Herbert passed away in 2011 at the age of 105, and then Zelmira followed in 2013, also at the age of 105. But the Fishers leave behind a strong example of lasting love and marital commitment for all of us. So I wonder what year they did the Q&A on Twitter, and if they were the oldest Twitter users ever in the history of Twitter. That would be interesting to see.
Yeah.
But also, yeah, just, I mean, it's pretty sage advice, right? Like, be friends. I always say, people are like, what's the secret? I'm like, my husband makes me laugh every single day. You make me laugh more than I cry, and as long as that's the case, we'll be together. And
but they didn't say that, right? They didn't say that was a key.
Yeah, they said they say be friends, right? Friends for life. Well, I mean, I guess it depends on what kind of people you keep in your life, right? If you keep people in your life that make you cry, whether it be friends or anyone else, then you're not going to live a very happy, successful life. So get to it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's funny. I mean, married for 87 years, alive for 105. Like the changes in ideals, like, was she allowed out of the kitchen, and like, was the whole getting married in one world, one culture, one society, right? Mm-hmm. Where societal norm stuff, and living through a whole thing. I mean, I guess it shows that it doesn't matter.
Right? We saw it with your grandmother, right? I mean, she lived to almost 103, and it was funny. She said she looked at a computer and she wondered why people would be on laptops and stuff, and she was like, so you ask that thing something and it tells you anything? It lets you know anything you want? And it was like,
sometimes.
Pretty much. And she's
like, now more so than when she asked the question.
Yeah, and then she was just like, huh. And carried around. I
already know everything I need to know. Thanks.
But it had to be super. I mean, she was around. She grew up with horse and buggy before the car. Let alone
1908.
Right.
Odd 8.
So it was always amazing for me to see like what she found amazing in the world that we live in now, and the speed of it, obviously. But she was young at heart, and kind of where she would just be like, those people are old over there, and like, those people are 20 years younger than you. It's
definitely true that she acted younger, she felt younger than she was, for sure.
Yeah. Right on. Go ahead.
Okay, well, let's move into recommendations real quick.
Okay.
My first one is a clock that rotates to tell you the time anywhere in the world. So you kind of got to see this, but basically, if you look at, like, you got a clock with a face on it, and then it's a cylinder. So if you turn it on the side, it has the names of cities along the side. And so whatever city it's sitting on, like on the base, so it's not perfectly round. They're kind of little sides for each city. When you turn it so that, say, Seattle it's sitting on the word Seattle, it tells you the time in Seattle. Cool. When you turn it to sit on New York, it tells you the time in New York.
Cool. Is it a watch or a...
It's a clock, like a desk clock, yeah. Cool. A small Korean, we'll have the link in the show notes. You really kind of, I hope I described it, but you got to kind of look at it to really see. It makes sense. It's not overly complicated. But it's just a brilliant idea, right? Oh, for people who need it, right? And I work in multiple time zones every day, at least 4 different time zones for people I'm conversing with and trying to meet with. This would be pretty cool. Like, I could have it on Alaska time, and when I'm off work, I can move it back over to...
Can you choose the cities?
No, it's set, and they are all around the world. So let's see here. It's a small Korean firm carving a name out for itself by making truly beautiful objects. It's a nice looking clock. It's not like modern at all. It looks like a sort of old school world clock, and it can be rotated to display the time anywhere in the world. While the body and hands rotate as expected, the face hangs freely. It's 12 pointing upwards and 6 points downwards, regardless of the clock's orientation. The spinning functionality is a clever trick that's undoubtedly been thought of before, but coupled with a good design team, it goes a long way. It's called the Leibel, Leibal $49, which for a clock, I mean, for a nice looking clock, is probably within range. And we'll have a link to the show notes. But I just thought it was a cool little for World Wednesday. How very appropriate to have a clock that can tell you the time all over, and something that I deal with on a daily basis. So. And even computers aren't, unless I have some sort of widget or something.
Yeah.
It's not an easy way. Like your computer clock on your is set to one time zone. You can change it manually, difficultly, and then change it back or whatnot. But this is just a very slick, elegant way to kind of get that. So
cool.
There you go, the label.
Very cool. My next recommendation is it's called Madfire, and since it's Madfire's motion book tool. And since I am working on lettering your comic book, and I stumbled upon this article and World Wednesday, and it says, as Comic-Con, the international comic book gathering, which started in 1970 in Southern California, but has over the years grown in massive popularity all over the world. The world of comic books, science fiction, and film enjoy celebrating tried and true heroes, and it lists the heroes, and they're saying basically it's time for new heroes that represent everybody from different areas want different heroes, and I was drawn to it for this factor, but then this tool, it's Madfire and DeviantArt team up to make these awesome motion books with just still images.
I spent a lot of time on DeviantArt.
And you just do, which is a great place for if you want to be inspired, if you want to get art, if you want to whatever. It's a great place if you have any interest in art or creating art. But this is it's a collaboration tool, so it has people basically it's open source, so it's an open web browser, and you log in to create.madfire.com, and then it opens up on your computer desktop. You upload images from your desktop or wherever you get your images from, and then you create these motion comic books.
Cool.
And it is awesome, and I just found it really, really late last night before I went to bed, so I can't wait to actually play around with it. And it has like lettering and everything, but it's a collaborative tool, so I think everything that everything that goes into it, people, it's just basically like a free tool. People read it for free, basically. So you could do like trailers and things like that.
Yeah, you're not going to monetize it.
You're not going to monetize it, exactly. But it is great for exposure or teaming up with an artist that wants more recognition or what have you. And I just can't wait to check it out. And that is called Madfire. So create.madfire.com, and I found this article in Forbes by Lori Kozlowski.
Okay. Well, we've talked. My last recommendation is we've talked about facial recognition before. I think a couple times on the show. With the NSA and Facebook and the FBI, everybody's getting into facial recognition. But until now, where they haven't used facial recognition, cat feeders. Yes, that's right. There is now, or soon will be, a smart cat feeder with built-in facial recognition. It's called the Bistro, and it's a high-tech feline food and water hub with sensors that monitor consumption. It should be noted we have a cat, or there's a cat that visits us. It's kind of hard to say we have one, like any kind of ownership in it. It comes and goes, and it's great. I love it. The big problem with it, if I were to name any problem with the cat, is that it wants to be fed all the time, and it makes that need known by, meowing at first. If that doesn't work, clawing, biting, nibbling on the. No, it's not like malicious, but
cat.
Yeah, licking your nose when you're sleeping, things like. Because she wants to be, of course, wants to be fed at like 4 in the morning.
Two is her primary time.
11 at night. Yes, them being nocturnal and all that, right? So this is what we need, apparently. Especially because we can put it like when we travel. Again, we don't own the cat. The cat is just kind of comes and goes. We tried to put some food out, but we've seen one raccoon, right? And we have
And there's lots
squirrels,
of
we
and
have
there's
other
lots of other
cats.
cats, right, in the
Yeah.
hood.
So here you go. This is the perfect solution, right? We put this feeder out. So when we're home, we'll put it inside or whatever, and it will just automatically feed her. And it's got a scale. So the whole thing you have to kind of see again. It's one of these things you really need to see the picture of how it works. But it's a scale. It's a feeder with a scale in front of it. So they step on the scale, and then it scans. Oh, yep, this is Kitty recognized dispensing food pellets, and then she eats or whatever, and then it goes away. And so when it's outside, if we leave it outside, it'll scan for fish. And, oh nope, that's a raccoon. That's not Kitty. So
Hmm,
no food is
interesting.
forthcoming. And then but if Kitty gets on it, then it's recognized. Um, and if you were in a home that had either like multiple cats and one of them had, our cat is as thin as a rail, so it doesn't really have health issues. But if you had either multiple cats, one of which was maybe obese or whatever, health either needed to eat more or needed to eat less or whatever, it would only you could leave it here and only the one cat would get fed, I guess. Um, or if you had a dog or something and the dog couldn't, this would keep it away from the dog just devouring all of it, and the cat would still get fed from time to time. um, there's a requisite camera to distinguish between members of your in-home pack, and the furry creatures stand on a scale that measures their weight while eating. All of the data is collected and beamed to a smartphone app, of course, to keep you abreast of the activity while you're away for your quantified cat, which officially marks the first time I've heard that phrase or seen that phrase in an article. The quantified cat. Heck, you can even watch your pet's feast should you so choose, because again, it has that camera for the facial recognition, but it also becomes then like a webcam or a pet cam where you can watch them eat. That's the Bistro, $149 if you pre-order now. Otherwise, $249 when it launches in March.
Interesting.
This is the world we're living in, people. We have the technology.
Awesome. My last one is going to be, it's going to seem like a pretty obvious one, but after talking to a bunch of other uh, entrepreneurs and coaches, I'm going to suggest Google. Google it.
What's this? What's this Google you speak of? Not
So
familiar with
if
how that
you're
works.
if you're in
Wait, this
business,
is a
if you're a
website?
coach or a life coach or a business coach or know about computers or have a specific knowledge, and I'm sure pretty much everyone has a knowledge base about something pretty specific, you know that you get questions a lot. And I get people that ask me lots of business, in particular business questions or social media questions, and it can take up a lot. Sometimes it can take up time just getting back to them. And so if you're a person asking a question about anything, just Google it first and see what you find. Go If you don't see it on the first page, I know it's crazy,
There's a next
but
button
there's the
way down
next page. And
there.
I love helping people. I really do. I love helping people. But if it's just like this, like really basic question that can be answered easily from the loads and loads of information that's out there and readily accessible, then before you ask somebody for their time, which they value very much, then perhaps a Google search would be great. Or you can go to Ask Our Breakfast Club, and I'd be happy to answer you or lead you at least to a link. I'll share that link with you. That's another T-shirt that I said I was going to make during this conference. Oh, I'll
And we
send you. I'll send you the link.
yeah, and we laugh but not to sound condescending, because this I fall victim to this exact same thing, right?
Yeah.
Where I'm pondering something. So I'm designing this comic book, or I'm doing the podcast, or I'm working, or whatever, and we sit there and like, okay,
Try
either
to
by
figure
myself
it
or with
out.
someone else, and like, oh well, how would this, how maybe I'll try. How do I do this? I'm gonna go through here like Google, and then I Google it, and it's like literally the first or second link. Like, here's how you
Yeah.
fill in the blank to fix your problem you just spent an hour trying to do, right?
Yeah.
So even I do
No,
that,
I think
and
everyone does it, and it's
yes,
natural. And then you want a person to tell you when, meanwhile, it's just a link. So Google it.
yep, you should Google.
That's that's all I got.
I'm
But
out too.
You're out too. So thanks for joining us today at Our Breakfast Club. Go and visit us at ourbreakfastclub, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you have or comments or anything, any different opinions that you might have on anything we talked about today or any other episode.
Yep. Don't forget to visit the Reddit. That's reddit.com/r/OBC, where you can see stories we've talked about. Some of the stories maybe we haven't gotten to yet, but if you're interested in them, you can vote them up, you can vote them down, you can comment on them, and that's yet another way that you can give us some feedback on what you'd like to hear about, what you didn't like hearing about, what do you want to hear more about, all that good stuff.
Right on. On Twitter, you can find me at MoxieMoguls and Kurt at XFig. And have an awesome, awesome day. Aloha.
Thanks, everyone.